I've been scrolling through social media all this week and I've been watching people graduate. I've been watching people talk about their accomplishments and how far they've come in life. And I'm genuinely happy for everyone I've seen do well in life. But I realized that subconsciously I started comparing myself to everyone I was looking at. And I thought to myself, why aren't I doing what they're doing? Why can't I be as good as them? And I've thought this before, but this it came back to me and I thought to myself, why am I thinking that just because I don't have this, I'm weak or I'm somehow less than? And it basically summarized through the phrase, their strength is not your weakness. Just because someone is strong in something doesn't mean you're weak in that thing. Now, you might not have the same level of strength they have in that same domain or in whatever it is that you're looking at, but it doesn't mean that it's a weakness of yours. Now, imagine if I was going to do a certain amount of pull-ups, right? Let's say you go online, you just started your journey of calisthenics or working out, and you can do 5 pull-ups, 5 solid pull-ups. And then you see someone online doing 15 pull-ups, and then after the 15 pull-ups, they do 10 muscle-ups. Now, you're looking at it and they're like, oh, that's impressive. But then you start to think, maybe I'm pretty bad at this. Maybe I should stop, because you keep seeing the same impressive things happening over and over again. So because of what you've seen, because of the highlights of other people, you think that your highlights are worth less and therefore become a weakness. But again, it's not true, right? Like if someone can do 21 pull-ups and I can only do 15, I'm still relatively strong. Like if let's say I'm 180 pounds or let's say I'm 200 pounds and they're 150 pounds, relative to their body weight, they're strong. Relative to my body weight, I'm also strong. It's like, just because I can't get to 21 or I haven't reached 21 pull-ups yet doesn't mean I'm weak. It just means I'm not as strong as they are according to their circumstances. And even comparing ourselves to other people, it's never a one-to-one comparison. I want you to imagine that you're going to run a race, right? Let's say you're running in a 400-meter race and someone's running in a 100-meter race. Now, your teammates, right? And you see them run their race and it's 100 meters. They finish in a certain amount of time. And you're like, why can't I finish my race in the same amount of time? Because you're running 400 meters and they're running 100 meters. Do you see my point here? My point is that sometimes, again, we're comparing ourselves to people as though it's a true one-to-one comparison, but it's not, because we have different races to run, or rather marathon. Whatever analogy you want to use, it's still different for all of us. Now, there are going to be some similarities, right? In terms of the example I gave, they're both races, and there are things like proper form, diet, nutrition, like all that important stuff. There's going to be some alignment to some degree, but when it comes to the specific details of what you're doing, it's not going to be the same, right? So that's why I say that the person that you're comparing yourself to can be a secondary standard. They can be a secondary metric for you measuring your strength or how good you are at something, or your aptitude or your capability, but it can't be the primary metric. Your primary metric has to be yourself, or rather the past self that you're trying to improve from, right? Let's look at a family as a microcosm of all of this. You have a family, and let's say to increase the level of similarity, you have twins, right? Grew up under the same roof, same values, same everything, same principles, same everything, right? But there's still going to be significant difference in their personalities. Just because they grew up under the same circumstances doesn't mean they're going to be the same person. So how much more you and the people you're looking at? You're not the same person. And therefore, I think it's unfair to us, or unfair to you, to compare yourself to someone else in order to demean yourself. It doesn't really help, because it's not a fair comparison. And whenever you're making a comparison that isn't fair, any side effects of that or any consequences of that comparison is invalid immediately. Now, if the comparison leads you to want to improve yourself, brilliant, right? Like for me, my friends run long distances, right? 8 miles, 9 miles, 5 miles, 4 miles, just like casually. I think I tried to do that once and it didn't go well, but I did train for like a marathon, a 5K, and I ran it in 21 minutes, and I was so like gassed. I was happy, but I knew that there were other people that were looking at me like, that's impressive, and I was like, oh really? It is? And in that moment, I realized, oh, okay, if they run 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles pretty well, I'm gonna find a distance I can run and run that pretty well. So I started running a mile, and eventually I went from, I think, a pace of 8 minutes, 38 seconds to my quickest pace was, I think, 5 minutes and 58 or 53 seconds. Now, if I had looked at myself and thought, oh, nah, that's their thing, let them do their thing, right? I'm not even going to try and get to their level. I would have never found out that I was capable of doing such things, right? I would have just thought, oh, I'm not competitive, I'm incapable. But in my attempt to actually find my own strength, in my attempt to sharpen my own tool set or my own skill set, I was able to find out or identify something I could be good at in my own lane. The strengths of the people we look at or the people we're comparing ourselves to don't automatically become our weakness just because it's their strength. I'm pushing myself to realize that as well, because even with content creation, I'll look at other people and I'm like, oh, this is so good. Again, genuinely happy for them, genuinely excited that someone is capable of doing something like this, and I'm impressed by it. But then there's this feeling of like, you know what? You're actually inadequate. You're not that good. You can't do this. Therefore, you should quit. It's like, what kind of conclusion is that? What kind of conclusion is just because you can't do something someone else can? That took them however many years to do. Just because you can't do the same thing, you're somehow less than, or you're not as capable as them. Now, fair enough. You might not be as capable as them, but it doesn't devalue you to any degree. It just means that, okay, there's something I could work on. And guess what? I'm sure there's something you can do that that person that you're looking at can't do. There's something that you're good at that they're not good at. There's something that is your strength that is not their strength. So moral of the story, like I said, is their strength, whoever you're comparing yourself to, their strength is not your weakness. Now, if their strength is your weakness, what do? If you can talk to them or find out how they got to where they've gotten, find out, and then make sure that you sharpen your tool set to actually get to where they've gotten as well. And we have information at our fingertips. Like, this is basically the world in the device. If you want to know how to improve your pace, go online, look up how diet, form, supplements, I don't know, whatever it is that you need to look up to say, okay, instead of thinking, okay, I'm not as good as this person, it shouldn't just end there. It should just, you should take it to the logical conclusion. Okay, how did this person get as good as they've gone? How did they get to this level that I seem to want to get to? Why am I feeling inadequate? Why do I feel like I'm not as good as them? And maybe objectively, I'm not as good as them, but how do I get to the point where I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to keep getting better. Now, there's a flip side to this where you think someone's weakness is your strength. That's where pride comes in. You're like, maybe you're comparing yourself to someone and they can't do as many pull-ups as you do, or they can't run as fast as you do in a certain amount of time, right? So you think, I'm better than this person, but that's never a way to think. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall, right? If you're so enamored with yourself and your own accomplishments that you think that you're better than everyone else, it will create room for you to become complacent, which is the opposite of what you thinking you're less than does, right? If you think you're less than someone, right, you're distracted, right? You're not focusing on sharpening your skills. I think it's the same thing when you think you're better than someone or when you think someone is weaker than you. Now, no matter what, whether you're right or not, thinking that and thriving off that doesn't help you, because then you become complacent. Like I said, you don't sharpen your own skill set. So whether you think someone is better than you or you think you're better than someone else, those two things don't help when your final thought is that, okay, therefore I shouldn't even try to do this because I'm weak, or I don't need to work on this because I'm better than this person. But the thing is, they are not your competition. Everyone else is not your competition. You are your competition. You from yesterday was your competition. You from 10 minutes ago is your competition. Every time we look at other people's highlights and what they've done well, and even where they've gone wrong, we cannot think it's a one-to-one comparison, because we're not them, they're not us. We have a different journey. They have a different journey. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll use them as a secondary standard. I'll use them as like a measuring pole or a barometer for my own progress. But my primary indicator of whether or not I'm improving or not should be myself, should be me, my past self. So if I run, let's say, a 7-minute mile yesterday, if I ran that yesterday, today, if I ran a 6-minute, 58-second mile, fam, that's improvement. That's fantastic. That's blessed. But even if I run something, the same thing or slightly more than that, it doesn't really matter, because I'm still being consistent and I'm going to improve at some point. So we should never put ourselves down just because someone else is good at something or better at something than us. We should just try to push ourselves in order to get to a certain level where we can say, you know what, I'm not where this person is and I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better than I was yesterday. So moral of the story, just get 1% better every day. Just sharpening your own tool set, sharpen your own skill set, and you should be able to get where you want to go or get where you want to be, because your ideal version of yourself is not the same version of the person that you're looking up to. Like, you're not the same person. You don't have the same goals. And even if you have the same goals, the path you have to get there is not the same. Whenever you catch yourself feeling negative because you're comparing yourself to someone else, whether that negativity is in terms of like you feel prideful or you feel less than, I want you to realize that one, it's never a one-to-one comparison because you're not the same person. You haven't gone through the same life. You haven't done the same things, right? And again, you don't have the same path set before you. And two, their strength is not your weakness, right? Just because someone is good at something doesn't mean that you're not good at that thing. They may be better at it in terms of how much effort they've put in and how much time they've put in, but it doesn't mean that objectively they are better than you as a person. Your strength isn't all your identity is. Your identity isn't wrapped up in what you can and cannot do. It's a part of your identity, but it's not the whole thing, right? So I just want to say, don't fall into the trap of complacency when you think you're better than someone, and also don't fall into the trap of insecurity when you think someone is better than you, because it's never a one-to-one comparison. And if it's not a one-to-one comparison, it's not a fair comparison. So thank you for watching. I hope that helps. And as always, Godspeed. Now I have to walk up to the camera to just pretend I'm not here. Godspeed. Oh, well, hey, yes, Sue. What is that?